Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Edsel Ford High School. I am honored to stand before you on this special day. Let me begin by introducing the color guard who will lead us in the presentation of the colors by the Vietnam Veterans of America. Mr. James Heward, Chapter 267 Color Guard, Mr. Tony Gramer, Color Guard Sergeant, and Mr. David Klein, Mr. Eugene Semanik, Mr. Francis Leader, and Mr. Nick Kamensky.
Color guard, and one, forward, Lark. Color guard, halt! Right, hey! Post colors, huh! Present, ha! Order, ha! Forward, ha! Left face, huh! Forward, ha!
Gentlemen, as you leave the stage, we have seats saved for you in the first row. Thank you for your service. Now please rise, stay standing actually, I meant to say, while the Edsel Ford Chamber Choir performs the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free, and the home of the brave, home of the brave.
I would now like to take a moment and acknowledge some special people in attendance today. Could we have all representatives from all veteran organizations please stand up and be recognized at this time? Also, I would like to introduce all school board members. Please stand for recognition. Mr. Hussein Berry, Miss Celia Nasser, if you're out there, and Michael Mead, President. Also, thank you to all our city council members who are present today, and of course, Mayor Jack O'Reilly. I also have to introduce and welcome Superintendent Dr. Glenn Maleyko, our Executive Director of Student Achievement, Dr. Yusuf Masalam, and the Executive Director of Business Services and proud Edsel parent, Mr. Tom Wall. Thank you to Mr. Doyle, Director, and our Edsel Ford Chamber Choir. Big thanks to Ms. Oren for helping with our instrumentalists and sound support. Thank you to our video production crew. Gordon and Eric been running around all morning, and any other media members that are present as well, thank you. And a special thank you and welcome to all the family members and friends of the 23 former Edsel Ford students that we are honoring today. Please stand and be acknowledged. I would now like to take the time to acknowledge the refurbishing of the plaque that resides just outside those doors. Thank you to the class of 1968 who a few years ago refurbished the plaque that honors these fine young men appropriately. The plaque is just above the table where the roses will be placed later in the ceremony. Welcome to today's ceremony and thank you for attending. I'm Scott Casebolt, proud principal of Edsel Ford High School. I'm honored to welcome you and be speaking with you today on such an important occasion. We are here to honor our service members and to remember the sacrifices they have made in honor of duty, honor, and country. Memorial Day is the day to acknowledge the sacrifices of those men and women who have given their lives for the service of their country. We are here today to honor our heroes, to remember their achievements, and their courage and their dedication, and to say thank you for their sacrifices. Thinking of the heroes who join us in this group today, and those who are here only in spirit, a person can't help but feel awed by the enormity of what we encounter. We stand in the midst of patriots and the family and friends of those who have nobly served. The service members we honor today came from all walks of life, but they shared several fundamental qualities. They possessed courage, pride, determination, selflessness, dedication to duty and integrity, all qualities needed to serve a cause larger than oneself. Many of them didn't ask to leave their homes to fight on distant battlefields. Many didn't even volunteer. They didn't go to war because they loved fighting. They were called to be a part of something bigger than themselves. They were ordinary people who responded in extraordinary ways in extreme times. They rose to the nation's call because they wanted to protect a nation which has given them and us so much. This weekend, people throughout the country will gather together to remember, to honor, and pay gratitude to those who have served our country. Our gathering here today is just a small spark in the flame of pride that burns across the nation today and every day. It pales in comparison, but it's one small way we can honor those who have made the ultimate sacrifice so that we can live our life in freedom. Your presence here today and that of the people gathering across America is a tribute to those lost and also their families. It is a way to say we remember. Thank you all for attending today. Everyone in the military understands there's one leader of a platoon or regiment, so let me introduce you to ours, Superintendent of Dearborn Public Schools, Dr. Glenn Maleyko.
Thank you, Mr. Casebolt. Good morning, students, staff, honored guests, military veterans, dignitaries. The other day I was driving home and thinking about how nice it would be to have an extra day off, a little more time to relax, get some work done in the yard, and maybe a barbecue with friends. We know the weather has not been that great for this spring season. There's nothing wrong with enjoying our holidays. In fact, it's important for our own health to be able to unwind, slow down a bit, and spend time with family. However, it's even more important to make sure we do not forget the meaning behind these very special holidays, and to make time to honor those who paid the ultimate sacrifice so that we can enjoy these days. That is what Memorial Day is all about. In November, we have a day to pay tribute and thank our veterans, those who have served in the armed forces, but Memorial Day is different. This weekend, we pause with reverence to respect and honor those who gave their life while serving in the military. We owe it to those fallen heroes and their families to never forget the true meaning of Memorial Day. Many who died while serving in the armed forces were at the very start of their life. I know we're going to hear some stories. They had plans, dreams, and hopes. They were looking forward to a future filled with friends and family. They were the next police officers, scientists, engineers, and yes, teachers. Like many of you, I too have had many family members serve in the armed forces. My grandfather, who passed away in 2012, served in the U.S. Navy in World War II. I heard many stories from him, and he was extremely proud that he served his country. I am fortunate. I was able to hear those stories firsthand, directly from my grandfather. On Memorial Day, we must remember the families who were never able to hear those stories firsthand because their loved one was lost while serving their country. Let them know that their family member is appreciated and remembered. Let them know that the ultimate sacrifice, the price that was paid for our continued freedom, will not be forgotten. President Franklin Roosevelt said, "Those who have long enjoyed such privileges as we enjoy forget in time that men have died to win them." So this weekend, enjoy the days off. Spend time with family and friends. Maybe grab a blanket or a lawn chair and make your way to the big parade on Michigan Avenue. I plan to be there. But always remember the true meaning of Memorial Day. Remember the mothers, daughters, sons, and fathers who served our country and gave their life defending our freedom. Thank you, and may God bless our fallen, our veterans, our active military, in this great nation, the United States of America. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maleyko. Now, the Edsel Ford Chamber Choir will perform "Tell My Father."
So my father that his son didn't run or surrender, that I bore his name with pride as I tried to remember. You are judged by what you do while passing through. As I rest 'neath fields of green, let him lean on my shoulder. How I'd spend my youth so the truth could grow older. My father, when you can, I was a man. Tell him we will meet again, where the angels learn to fly. Tell him we will meet as men, for with honor did I die. I wore the blue, proud and true, through the fire. Others know I love him so. Tell him we will meet again, where the angels learn to fly. Tell him we will meet as men, for with honor did I die. Somehow I wore the blue, proud and true, like he taught me. Tell my father when you can, I was a man.
Congratulations to Oscar Vasquez, who was our soloist, and the other young man. Fine job. Please let me introduce to you now the leader of this fine city of Dearborn and longtime supporter of Edsel Ford, our mayor, Mr. Jack O'Reilly.
Thank you. I know it's very difficult because you're here and this school has been such a great supporter of our military and our veterans, and we really appreciate that because it is real important. But I also know that right today, you're all thinking about all the things that are coming up in your lives, the changes, the summertime. So many of you may be going off to schools, and there's a lot on your mind. And I just want to leave you with one thought about our Veterans Day, and that is that all wars were not equal. And you've studied them in school, and you understand that some wars, of course, our Revolutionary War, were pivotal for our existence even, but each war has a tone and life of its own. But the soldiers who fight in it, the people who do the work for us to protect us, they should not be judged by how people perceived this war or that war. It's that they chose to say, I am going to meet my obligation, I'm going to be part of this great nation, and I'm going to go out and protect it and fight for it because that's what I have to do. And that's what makes them heroes. And again, as I said, going through, I went through the war that was very contentious, and people were on all kinds of sides. And in that time, for example, they were trying to recruit people, and they were requiring people to go in, not voluntarily, but to come in. And they even had a system where you would get you would have a card, and it would determine what ranking you would be selected to go into the war. And that seems now, it's lasted for a long time, but in that time it seemed kind of unfair. I got the wrong draw, so I'm going. But again, those things don't matter. What matters is that throughout our country, our people went to war, they fought a war, they died in a war on our behalf to keep us free. And that's why we're here. It is about the people, our friends, neighbors, relatives, and others, people who said, yes, I'm going to be there. And that's where that thread goes all the way through. Every time we've had a war, every time we fought for this country, every time we tried to make sure that we could ensure peace back home here for everyone who lives here, those were the people who put it all on the line. And today we recognize and thank those who put everything on the line, and it took their life, and they no longer came back to do and make the things they said they would, the things they planned, the things they sat in an auditorium like this, listening to speeches, and they're thinking about what they're going to be doing in their life, what kind of plans they're making for themselves. And in just this moment, we're saying, let's remember them. Let's remember that they were like us. They had all the goals and ambitions, but they also had the sense of duty. They had the sense of requirement as a free nation, where we get to vote who makes the decisions, where we get to have a voice in our government. They also understood that that meant that they had to put everything on the line. They did it, and today, or at least this period, we say, we didn't forget you, we still honor you. And it wasn't about the war, it was about you and your commitment to our great nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Now please enjoy the Edsel Ford Combined Choirs as they perform America the Beautiful. Okay, well, no. I have to introduce you properly. Threw me a curve, but I can adjust. I would never let you come to the mic. We're going to begin our rose ceremony and honor our heroes at this point, so I have to do a special introduction and welcome back for Miss Lisa Lark, one of our Edsel Ford alumni and published author of the book entitled All They Left Behind, Legacies of Men and Women on the Wall. Please welcome Miss Lisa Lark.
Good morning. As previous speakers have mentioned, the names that we honor today are no longer, should be seen as just names on a wall. These were young men with lives and with futures and with families and friends, and I'd like to introduce you to some of them today. Dennis Stancroft. Dennis had 2 younger siblings, and the family lived on Columbia Street. He was engaged to his high school sweetheart, who he had grown up with as she lived across the street. He was an excellent swimmer. He enlisted with 2 friends from Edsel Ford. He was the first in Dearborn to die in the Vietnam War when he was shot during combat on Christmas Eve, 1965. He was 20 years old. David Terwilliger. David attended O.L. Smith. He had 3 sisters. He loved drawing and cars and was on the wrestling team here at Edsel. He enlisted in the Army so that he could control his destiny and was promised a post in Germany rather than being sent to Vietnam. Regardless, he arrived in Vietnam in 1966 and a few weeks later was killed in action. He was 19 years old. Rudy Jackie Mack. Rudy had 2 sisters and a brother, and they lived on Monroe Street. He loved taking things apart and was very mechanical. He was drafted into the Army, but regardless was committed to the job that he had to do. He served as a crewman on a helicopter, protecting injured when they were being transported. He was killed in a helicopter crash in May of 1966. He was 21 years old. Earl and his twin sister Earlene lived in the Spring Wells Park area. He was a Boy Scout. He left school in 1964 and joined the Army because he wanted to do something important with his life. While in the Army, he received training to be a medic because he wanted to help people. He served 6 months in combat and was offered the chance to rotate to the back where it was somewhat safer. He declined and chose to stay. He died in combat in June of 1966 at 19 years old. John Cochran. John lived on Roosevelt Street. and he had 4 sisters. He was an excellent football player and member of the track team while here at Edsel. In the summer, he worked at Camp Dearborn. He enlisted in the Army in 1962. He was married and scheduled to meet his wife in Hawaii for a rest and relaxation tour when he was killed by a sniper's bullet in September of 1966 at the age of 25. Bruce Reynolds. Bruce had 2 brothers. He was married and had 2 young sons. He enlisted in the Navy in 1963 when he was 17 years old. He was on leave in 1966 when he was killed in a car accident at the age of 19. Alan Cartoonan. Alan and his family lived on Alice Street. He was engaged to be married. He joined the Navy during his senior year at Edsel Ford and was stationed in Florida on the USS Yellowstone, a destroyer. He died in an auto accident in November of 1966 when he was 19 years old. George Siegwald II. George was called Butch by his family. He had a brother and a sister, and they lived on Cleveland Street. He wanted to be a mechanic. He enlisted with his friends George Roller and Dennis Stancroft, who you've already met. George was stationed in North Carolina, serving as a corporal in the Marine Corps when he was killed in a car accident. He was 21 years old. Robert Yoakum Jr. He was called Chip by his family, his friends, including his 3 sisters. While at Edsel Ford, he was in plays such as Bye Bye Birdie, and he was on the track team. He was also the goalie on a local community hockey team. Chip went to MSU and was engaged to be married. He enlisted in the Army and was commissioned as a lieutenant. He had just received his orders to go to Vietnam when he died in a motorcycle accident at the age of 21. Henry Fugit. Henry had 3 sisters. He was working for a trucking company after high school when he was drafted 5 months after graduation. He arrived in Vietnam in June of 1967 and killed when on a patrol in October of 1967, just 18 months after finishing high school. He was 19 years old. William Schmaltz III graduated in 1965. He enlisted in the Navy and was stationed in the United States. He was home on leave visiting his grandmother when he died in a car accident. He was 20 years old. Randy Dillander. Randy lived on Chestnut. He had 3 brothers and a sister and went to Stout Junior High. Randy wanted to be a conservation officer. He worked as a busboy after high school. He was serving as a dog scout handler in Vietnam when he was killed on patrol in 1967 when he triggered a booby trap. He was 19 years old. David Antal. David lived on Linden Street, where his mother still resides. She is 95 years old and misses her son every day. David loved the outdoors, hunting, fishing, going camping with his father. He went to Snow and Stout. His friends considered him a class clown because he could always make people laugh. David was drafted in 1966 and was serving as a crew chief on a helicopter when the helicopter clipped a tree and crashed. He was 20 years old when he died. Douglas McElroy. Douglas was an only child. He lived on Lincoln. While at Edsel, he was on the football and basketball teams. He joined the Army in 1967 with his friends Mike Niezgoda and Chuck Hanselman. They trained together and spent Thanksgiving of 1967 together before shipping to Vietnam. They promised to all come home for Christmas of 1968. Douglas was killed less than a month after arriving in Vietnam at the age of 19. Chuck Hanselman. Chuck lettered in track while he was at Edsel, and he was also an only child. He enlisted with his friends Doug McElroy and Mike Niezgoda. He loved Motown music and was known for his strong character. He arrived in Vietnam just before Christmas of 1967, right around the same time as his friends Doug and Mike. Chuck died the day after Doug did, January 10th, 1968. He was 19 years old. Jerry Clark. Jerry was one of 8 children, and the family lived on Bailey Street. He went to Henry Ford Community College and received his associates in drafting. He was drafted after college. Jerry was a well-known musician in his circle of friends, playing drums in a local band that had just started getting bookings. He was killed in combat in May of 1968 at the age of 22. Mike Niezgoda. Mike was one of 3 siblings, and they lived on Olmsted Street. He loved shop and had a 1966 Mercury Comet that he adored. He joined with his friends Mike and Doug and only outlived them by about 9 months. He was the last of the 3 friends to die, none of them making it home for Christmas 1968. His company was ambushed when he died at the age of 20 years old. Alan Hosnadel. Alan had 1 sister and lived on Olmsted. He went to Michigan State and was pre-med. Alan had to leave school when his father took ill. After leaving MSU, he lost his student deferment and was drafted almost immediately. He arrived in Vietnam in 1968 as a non-commissioned officer. He was killed in March of 1969. His father passed away shortly after. David Brown. David was the oldest of 3 boys. They lived on Linden Street. David was a Boy Scout, and he loved playing football and basketball in the park by Howe School. He loved animals and often took in strays. David was drafted in 1968 and died in combat 3 months after getting to Vietnam in June of 1969. He was 20 years old. Michael Jangowski. Michael lived on Roosevelt Street. He enlisted because he wanted to serve his country. He had a heart ailment that he had struggled with throughout his life, but he still chose to serve the country, our country. He was stationed in Korea and Japan and was home on leave in New Mexico when he passed away at the age of 20. Donald Rowley. Donald had 4 sisters. They lived on Edison Street. Don was on the swim team here at Edsel and had a great sense of humor. He was outgoing, and all of his classmates remember his happy-go-lucky nature and great smile. He was drafted in May of 1969 and sent to Vietnam in April of 1970. Shortly after arriving in Vietnam, Don realized that he could not, in good conscience, participate in this war or any war. He wrote a letter to Dearborn Mayor Orville Hubbard applying for conscientious objector status and asking to be able to come home and serve in the United States. That letter was dated June 23rd, 1970. He died the same day at 21 years old. James Stubblefield. James lived with his grandmother on Queen Street. He went to Smith Junior High School. James enlisted in the U.S. Air Force and had served nearly a full tour in Vietnam and was close to beginning his journey home when he was killed in a plane crash in November of 1970. He was 23 years old. Edwin Bird. Edwin was one of 4 children. He went to Nowlin and to Smith. He left Edsel after the 11th grade to join the Navy and planned on making service to our country a career. He was stationed in Virginia when he died in a car accident January of 1972, leaving behind a wife and stepchildren.
Thank you, Ms. Lark, for your continued efforts to honor our heroes. We will now listen to taps performed by Miss Leslie Adams. We'll now welcome the color guard to retire the flags.
Color guard. Halt! Right. Hey! Present. Halt! Order. Halt! Retreat colors. Halt! Port. Halt! Left. Hey! Forward. Halt!
Students, you will remain seated. That concludes our program. You'll leave when the first hour bell rings. I would like to thank all of our guests and again the families who attended today, as well as the dignitaries. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Thank you. Students, stay seated until the bell rings. Thank you all.